The funny thing is, I always thought moving into Willow Creek would be the start of some picture-perfect chapter, quiet streets, neighborly waves, maybe the odd barbecue now and then. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd end up in a war zone, fighting not just for my house, but for the right to even exist there. And it all started with a sentence I can still hear clear as day. I'm not entirely surprised you people managed to afford a house here, but I'll be damned if I let you turn this street into the ghetto. That's what she said to me, lips curled, eyes cutting right past me to my son, who was just a kid with a hammer, grinning up at the world like he owned it. That was my welcome, my warning, really, from the president of the HOA, though I wouldn't know her by name for a few days yet. We just moved in, my wife and I, after a lifetime of saving, driving beaters, putting off every vacation, just so we could give our boy a yard, a good school, and a shot at a normal childhood. Willow Creek looked perfect, almost too perfect, like a movie set with its copy-paste houses and chemically green lawns, and this silence that felt less like peace and more like surveillance. I should have seen it coming, I guess. The HOA binder was as thick as a Bible and twice as joyless, spelling out every possible shade of beige you were allowed to paint your shutters, and how high your grass could grow before someone had a meltdown. But hey, I'm a rule follower. I figured, how bad could it be? Famous last words, right? We moved in, unpacked, tried to settle. My son, all he wanted in the world was a treehouse in the giant oak in the backyard. I went full dad mode, planning, measuring, getting the right permits. Even sent the plans to the HOA for good measure. I got a single word back, received. I took that as a yes. You can laugh, it was my first mistake. First came the petty notices. The grass was a quarter-inch too long. The trash can sat out 15 minutes past the deadline. My wife started calling her the Dragon Lady, and the name stuck. We hadn't even met her yet, but her presence seeped through everything, an invisible hand, reaching into our home. Still, we started on the treehouse, father and son, weekends with lemonade and sandwiches, and the smell of sawdust. It felt right, like a memory in the making. But the first time she came storming over, blonde bob, tennis skirt, eyes sharp enough to draw blood. It was like a weather front moving in. No hello, no pleasantries, just a tirade about urban decay and unapproved modifications. My son stared at her, not understanding the poison in her words. I told her she was trespassing. She announced she was the HOA president and gave us 48 hours to dismantle the treehouse, or she'd do it herself. I promised my son nobody was going to touch that treehouse. I dug through every bylaw, highlighted every line. Our project was within the rules. I sent her all the documentation, confident we'd be fine. The next morning, we got a letter from her lawyer. The treehouse was a nuisance structure and potential surveillance platform. She claimed my 8-year-old was spying on the neighbors. I'll admit, I almost laughed, until it became clear she was dead serious. The neighbors kept their heads down, but we learned her history. Families fined into submission, basketball hoops, and welcome mats outlawed. Anyone who challenged her quietly driven out. But I wasn't backing down. The battle lines were drawn, and our son's treehouse was ground zero. The day she acted, I wasn't home. My wife called, sobbing so hard I couldn't make out the words, just she cut it down. I broke every traffic law in the city getting home. The backyard was chaos. The treehouse, a pile of splintered wood, my son with a gash on his forehead, his arm in a makeshift sling, paramedics everywhere. And the Dragon Lady, standing in the wreckage, holding a saw with this smug, victorious look. My wife saw her cut through the supports while our son was still inside. He was lucky, only dislocated his shoulder and needed stitches. But something inside me snapped. I went to the cops on scene, my own officers, since I'm the chief of police. She tried to play the victim, saying she was saving the children, but the facts were clear. She was arrested on the spot, handcuffed for felony assault and criminal damage. I should have felt relief, but I knew it wasn't over. Not with her. She was out on bail by the next morning, launching a full-on smear campaign, painting herself online as the heroic protector of the neighborhood, warning about dangerous new residents and illegal structures. Flyers, nasty comments, and this sickening, coded language about preserving the neighborhood. Some folks bought it. Suddenly, the friendly waves disappeared. We were the villains, the outsiders. The legal fight went nuclear. The HOA used community funds, our money, to pay for her criminal defense, claiming she was acting in her official capacity. We had to hire a lawyer and file a civil suit for the treehouse, the medical bills, the trauma. The HOA's lawyers fought dirty, demanding our son's school records, my wife's employment file, anything to paint us as the bad guys. We almost broke, until the first whisper of support arrived, a note on our windshield. She did the same thing to us. Don't give up. Then a neighbor tipped us to check old HOA minutes. The Henderson case, he whispered. We started digging, uncovering years of petty vendettas, shady contracts for her brother-in-law, rules enforced for some, ignored for others. Suddenly, people started reaching out, quietly, nervously. We weren't alone anymore. Then she escalated. Anonymous letters to my wife's school, accusing her of being unstable, a danger to children. Even though the principal knew it was lies, the rumors started. My wife was devastated, her calling, teaching, tainted by some stranger's malice. That's when I switched from defense to offense. I bought the best surveillance cameras money could buy, hid them everywhere, front yard, backyard, porch. Then I let it slip, through the neighborhood grapevine, that we'd be away for a weekend. Sure enough, she showed up with 2 goons, compliance inspectors in knockoff uniforms, sent to break in, plant evidence, find anything they could. She handed them cash, told them to be thorough. My cameras caught every word. The day they jumped my fence, I waited till they were on my lawn before stepping out. Full chief uniform, badge and all. The look on their faces? Priceless. My team swarmed in, arrested them on the spot. The Dragon Lady? She was caught red-handed on video, orchestrating the whole thing. The news blew up, local, then national. The HOA board resigned. Her allies ran for cover. Residents came by with flowers, casseroles, thank yous. The Dragon Lady was indicted on a laundry list of felonies. Her cronies flipped. The HOA, desperate to avoid a lawsuit, settled everything. Paid our legal fees, wrote a public apology to my wife's school, set up a fund for other bullied families. The money was nice, but the best part was the letter, seeing my wife hold her head high again. We rebuilt the treehouse with help from the whole neighborhood. Contractors, lumber, even the new HOA president, a retired engineer, showed up with blueprints and his own hammer. My son was project manager, laughing and fearless again. That little castle became a monument, not to spite, but to resilience and community. And when the dust settled, the Dragon Lady got 3 years in state prison. We finally had peace. Or so we thought. About 18 months later, a manila envelope landed in our mailbox. A clipping from the prison blotter, quietly announcing she'd been released early for good behavior. The air went out of the room. We considered moving, but it didn't feel right. We'd fought for this home. We stayed. She slunk back in, unrecognizable, hair dull, eyes empty, skittish as a stray cat. But it was her husband who picked up the torch. He started showing up at HOA meetings, nitpicking, filing complaints about noise, the treehouse, a basketball hoop. Death by 1,000 cuts, but the board saw through it. He ramped up, finding city ordinances from the 70s, trying everything short of arson to make our lives miserable. Then came the anonymous tip to Child Protective Services, accusing us of endangering our son with the rebuilt treehouse. 2 strangers in suits showed up, turned our house upside down, questioned our son. He was terrified, thinking he'd done something wrong, that the treehouse was cursed. The case was closed, but a shadow hung over us. Next came the attack on my career, a formal complaint to Internal Affairs, accusing me of abuse of power, falsifying reports, and using my position to settle personal scores. I was suspended, stripped of my badge, forced to defend every decision I'd made. I sat through humiliating interrogations, watching my reputation unravel, all because someone with a grudge and a pen could weaponize the system. We were drowning. Paperwork, investigations, stress eating us alive. My wife cried at night. My son had nightmares. The house felt like a fortress, not a home. The Dragon Lady didn't have to break down our door. She just had to whisper into the right bureaucratic ears. But you know what? The turning point came from the most unlikely source, her husband. One night, broken by the same war he was waging, he flipped, tipped off the investigators, handed over proof that his wife was behind every anonymous complaint. That was the nail in her coffin. She was arrested, charged with new felonies. Her husband filed for divorce, and the house went up for sale. I was reinstated. The city issued a public apology. We were vindicated, but something fundamental had changed. The neighborhood threw us a party, but the air was different, wary, fragile. The fight had taken a toll. My wife couldn't relax. My son stopped inviting friends over. Even I couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was just around the corner. So we left, sold the house for a tidy sum, bought a place out in the country. No HOA, just trees, a creek, 10 acres of peace and quiet. My son and I salvaged the old board with his initials from the treehouse. It hangs in our new garage, a scar and a reminder, both. If there's a moral to this story, I don't know if it's about standing your ground or knowing when to walk away. Maybe it's that monsters don't always live under the bed. They sometimes hold positions of authority and smile in your face while they sharpen the knives. Or maybe it's just this. Home isn't a place you fight for. It's a place where you don't have to fight at all. So what do you think? Was I right to stay and fight as long as we did? Or should we have just walked away sooner? Drop a comment. Let me know where you stand on justice, HOAs, or any war you've ever fought in your own backyard. I'll be reading every one.